Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of the Chamber Podcast. This is Rob Johnson. We have, I think, a very exciting topic and a very exciting guest in the studio today. So joining me from the very fine firm of Yackel McCreary CPA is Debbie Yackel. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we're talking taxes. And before you reach to shut off that podcast, we're talking about things that businesses actually need to know in the tax field. So obviously taxes, accounting, it's a topic that people can certainly just glaze over from. Obviously, there's a whole professional industry built around that, so people don't have to worry about it. But I think from a small business perspective, as people are getting out there and starting, there's a lot that they don't know that they ought to know just as a foundation, so that way they can make the right decisions and get the right people on the team. And that's largely what we want to talk about today. Before that, however, Debbie, I want to know more about you. So give me a rundown on your background, how you got involved in the CPA space, and why or where your passion came from for that.
Sure. So I guess I'll take you back quite a ways here. I knew in high school I wanted to be a CPA. I fell in love with working with numbers, not in the math geometry type of space, but financial numbers. To me, they always told a story. And so I just knew at that point in time, I wanted to be an accountant. I am from southeastern Michigan. I've lived in Michigan my whole life. I grew up in Livonia and went to University of Michigan Dearborn. Took a path to get my BBA in accounting. And after college, I went to work for a small regional firm in Troy. And at that point, I was in the audit department, corporate tax, and learned a lot in that environment. I was basically involved in industries of, southeastern Michigan. You have the auto industry, so we did a lot in manufacturing, but I was exposed to so many different industries, and that really interested me and continued, to carry me on the path of accounting and tax. So, going to work every day for me was working with a new client, working with a new industry, from manufacturing to construction, not-for-profit clients, small business. And, that's what I really enjoyed.
Okay.
And so I continued on, worked at that firm for about 10 years. After that time, I'd had 2 small children. I wanted to continue to build my family. And so I took a step back and started a sole practice and focused on small business, individual tax at that time, and had 2 more children. And so I spent about 12 years raising my kids and building the family and building my practice at the same time. Yeah. And it was really flexible. It gave me a good opportunity to work at both. Remote working back then was not the norm, but it worked out really well for me. So after about 12 years of, us building a small practice, I felt it was time to take the plunge and build up the practice. My kids needed me less. And a mutual contact put me in touch with Carol McCreary, my business partner. And she was at a place where she looked to retire, semi-retire. She needed a transition plan out. Sure. And so we met, and it was a good, a mutual beneficial arrangement between the 2 of us. So we joined forces, and she was located here in Brighton. I'm not from this area. Like I said, I grew up in Livonia, and so came out here. We decided to keep the firm located physically here. I fell in love with the area, and we've been here together as Yackel McCreary for over 5 years. We did move in 2019 over to Grand River in the Mill Point Pond building, and love the area. A good portion of our clientele is located in Livingston County, Howell and Brighton, Whitmore Lake, Fenton, Heartland. So we extend outward. We have clients all over the country. We have that extend even across the pond into Germany and England and such. Wow. So for a small firm, we have a wide reach for our clientele. But between both Carol and I, we have 60 plus years of experience between the 2 of us, and a lot of expertise behind us, basically.
That's tremendous. You need to get that international CPA firm moniker right on the door
The
when you walk in.
designation,
Absolutely,
sure.
absolutely. So I think a lot of small businesses, they venture into this category where, they don't really know where to start. And it sounds like with your background from whether it was large accounting practices and more of a team-centered environment with the first firm that you're at, all the way down to scaling down to and starting your own firm, it sounds like you have the very wide experience of seeing taxation from all angles, seeing how CPAs ought to run, whether it's a large corporate level or a small business, which I think gives you a really interesting perspective, because you can show businesses how do you go from having a accountant to having a team of accountants.
Right. It's important. Part of Yeagle McCreary and my focus is on small business. It's really important. A lot of the inquiries I would get would center around, hey, I want to start a new business. I'm an entrepreneur. And how do I do that? How do I go about doing it properly? It's really important, and we try to encourage new business owners and entrepreneurs to sit down and meet with us up front, meet with an attorney, make sure you're set up properly, right? Your tax entity structure is the way you want it to be, and that you understand it. Yeah. And just right out of the gate, you're doing things properly. We have a lot of clients who don't do that and come to us 9 months in, and they come into us with a little bit of a mess, and things aren't, properly
some
set
shoe
up.
Boxes to organize.
And so we fix that for them. And we're happy to work with them and sort it all out. It's important for us and for me as a business owner. My goal is always to get small business owners to understand their financial aspect of the business. While I want you to do what you do well and focus on that, you can't ignore the financial and tax compliance issues you have, and just understanding what the story tells you. Because to me, your financial numbers, they tell you a story about where you've been, where you are, and where you're going.
Yeah. You mentioned one thing that I really liked, and you said allowing business owners to understand why they should do this. And I think that's so important, because a lot of times people are like, well, I just want you to do it for me, take it off my plate. I have other things to do. But I can speak firsthand as a business owner, knowing why things need to be done the way they do will inform a lot of the directional decisions you make in the business. We had an issue. It wasn't even an issue. It was just an organizational structuring problem that we had to fix. And through that process, my controller walked me through, here's why we need to do it this way. Here's all the boxes we need to check. And here's why we need to do that. And that was such a helpful thing, because I learned a ton through that. And that informed how I led the company.
Absolutely. Knowing what the purpose is, not only that it's just a tax compliance because the state says you need to file something, or the federal government says this is what you need to file. Understanding why and what its purpose is important for us, and to explain to our clients so that they get some value out of it.
Absolutely. And what do you feel is the most important thing for small businesses? If someone's saying, hey, I just filed an LLC with the state, what should their next move be to ensure that they're starting off on the right foot? Or is it maybe even before they file the LLC?
Right. So that's a big question. We get a phone call, or someone will come sit down with us and tell us they've filed LLC paperwork. So my first question usually is, are you a single member LLC, or do you have multi-members? When you filed for your EIN, or have you filed for your EIN with the IRS, did you file as a sole proprietor LLC or a two-member, which means you're a partnership?
Yeah.
And usually I get a dumbfounded, kind of look, and I'm not really sure what I did. Well, do you have the paperwork, the application, or your letters? Let's take a look at things. So if they haven't filed that paperwork, we usually assist with that, and we go over the entity choices, right? Are you a single member LLC? Does that make sense to be a Schedule C business? You would report all your income on your 1040 on a Schedule C form. Does it make sense to be an S corporation, elect S status, which you can do as a single member, or do you have more than one member? So at that point, there's other choices, partnerships and
Sure.
S corp elections, or you can be a C corporation,
Yeah.
an entity that pays its own tax.
Yeah. And just that right there, like if you're just getting started in business and you're hearing single member LLCs, S Corps, C Corps. It's a lot to walk through. And I think people they start to glaze over and they're like, well, I'll never understand it. It's like, no, you will. It's like anything else. It just takes time. And you got to understand it, because if you don't, then you're going to run the risk of getting into a situation where, you didn't take all the benefits of an S Corp. You didn't, do distributions and a lower salary or whatever it is. Like you have to understand those differences, because that will ultimately help make your business grow more effectively.
Absolutely. Understanding how your business is set up and how it's supposed to work at a tax level is important, but it shouldn't direct how your business operates. But having that understanding is key for sure.
So Debbie, what would you say is one of your favorite aspects of your job? Because I think sometimes I would imagine it kind of feels like you're a bit of a detective, like you're putting pieces together. And as you said, numbers do tell a story. You can see how things have evolved or devolved, and you can really tell kind of the paper health of a company through the numbers that you have. So what would you say is one of your favorite aspects of your job?
I would say meeting with my clients, the variety. I'm not going to one company or one business every day. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me, what I really fell in love with right out of the gate was each week I'd be meeting another client, a different industry. I would be auditing those clients at that time. And while I've moved away from audit and I'm more into the small business consulting and tax preparation and accounting and bookkeeping assistance, it's still meeting with these individual clients or different businesses in the different industries that that they are in. I have clients in all different ranges. I have clients in fast food, in retail space. I have in service industries, heating and cooling, engineers, just a plethora of different industries, and it makes the job fun, right? We do a few not-for-profits. Quite a few of them are local here in Brighton, so assisting them and working through their goals and needs and their mission statement, it's rewarding to do that sort of work, especially when it's local.
Yeah, and I would imagine the variety just keeps it interesting. I'm sure there's always something new coming through the door.
We've definitely had a few interesting clients and interesting businesses to get started. I think one of my favorite, this goes back sometime when I was doing audits, but we used to audit a potato chip factory. And so we had to do an inventory audit, at the end of the year, and you have all your raw materials of potatoes and how many tons of potatoes there were, but best tasting potato chips I ever had right out of the fryer.
That's cool. Yeah, and that's I would imagine one of the things that people might not think about when they think about CPAs is just the diversity and also just the knowledge base of how to structure and level every single different type of company that you encounter. It takes, I would imagine, a lot of continued education to make sure you're hitting all the right marks, because things are always changing.
Right. It's important to have the expertise behind you. As a CPA, we're required to have 40 hours of continuing professional education each year. Our education goes well and above those 40 hours, especially the last few years. Since 2017, there was the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. Yep. In 2017, it was the largest tax change since 1986.
Really?
Well, that just so happened to be the year that Carol and I merged our practices. And so not only were we dealing with a ton of administrative and internal organization decisions to make, we were dealing with tax law change and numerous amounts of change. QBI deductions, which is huge for pass-through entities right now. And learning all of that right at the end of the year, because unfortunately, which is common, our politicians seem to like to provide those tax law changes usually in December, right when the tax season starts.
Super timely.
It's usually a lot of information to take in. And since then, obviously, with the pandemic, we've had a number of CARES Act and pandemic relief acts go through, and for which we had to learn a lot of information. We assisted our clients a ton with the PPP loans and with the ERTC credits and all of those things to help them stay afloat or to continue to run their business through the pandemic. And And so things have been crazy, I would say, the last few years. Very, very busy for us, which is a blessing. But a lot of expertise goes behind it. And we are a small firm, but we do our best. Our mission has always been to provide quality services and to be responsive to our clients. So when they call us, we're reaching back out to them within 24 hours. We want to communicate that we hear you. We may not be able to answer your question right away, but we will get back to you. We'll call you. We'll email you, whatever the case is. And to do that at reasonable prices.
Sure, absolutely. So Debbie, we have a feature on this show that we do weekly where I get to know you a little bit better, ask the same 3 questions to every guest. So no pressure.
Okay.
This is going to be all tax and accounting questions. No, I'm just kidding. It's going to be, so the first question is, if you could go back to when you first started your professional career, and you, let's say now you met somebody who's getting ready to embark on that same journey that you've already been on, what is 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you would give somebody that's just getting started in your industry that you may have, you wish you would have known?
I think I would give the advice of just time. Like, give it time to figure out what you like about the industry, what you don't like, because there are so many different avenues and directions you can take. Being an accountant or a CPA, you can stay in the public industry. You can go private and work for a company internally, whether you strive to be a bookkeeper or a controller or a CFO, all those things, there's different directions you can take. So take your time initially when you start out in the industry to really figure out what are the pros and cons and things you really like.
Excellent. The second question is, what is one of the things that you do to unwind, relax, kind of take a break from all the number crunching?
Well, I love up north Michigan, being from Michigan and living here my whole life. I do have a cottage up north, so I'll go up there and unwind, usually in after tax season time. Okay. But sitting around with my kids, spending time with the family, my dogs, running, exercising as much as possible, reading some books, all that good stuff that there's never enough time in the day to do. Sure. Love it.
What's a couple of favorite cities up north?
Traverse City is a favorite. I have family up there. Grew up spending a lot of time in Traverse City. Harbor Springs, Petoskey. Yeah. Also love those areas. Yeah.
That's very nice. And then the last question is, what currently is your favorite piece of technology?
Favorite piece of technology I don't know if I have a favorite piece. I mean, it's sure. a necessity in our industry, right? To have updated laptops and sure. Printers, scanners, all that good stuff. Even our iPhones and cell phones. I don't know that I have a favorite. Okay. Out of all those.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, one of there's 2 that are commonly referred to on the show. Generally, it's the iPhone, or it's the computer. So, because I'm always surprised, and I think I would think that someone would be like, it's the Kindle. Like, I love that I can put 1,000 books into a 6-inch device that doesn't hurt my eyeballs when I'm trying to read at night. Like that's one of mine. But yeah, I understand. There's a lot of tech out there. Yeah. It's hard to pick a favorite.
Yeah. The Kindle's probably my favorite outside of necessity for work.
The professional.
Right. Yeah, but a really good laptop and big monitors
absolutely
are important.
You need the triple monitor setup. Right. That's a necessity. So one last question. So you alluded to this briefly in one of your questions, but one of the most common things that business owners ask me, like when I'm doing consulting or structuring or anything like that, is what is the difference between a controller, a bookkeeper, and a CPA, and how do each of those 3 roles fit into the small business world?
Right. So each obviously has a background in accounting. Bookkeepers, so we have a bookkeeper at Yeagle McCreary who assists our clients. We have a lot of clients who come to us and we handle their bookkeeping for them. But small businesses may actually have a bookkeeper on staff who's going to handle your daily reconciliations, bank reconciliations, writing checks, sending invoices to clients, doing deposits, depending on the level of staff you have.
Yeah.
Most of our small business clients usually have, one person on staff who's handling all those responsibilities and duties. And then it just goes from there. The larger type entity may have a controller on staff who handles more of your financial reporting, those needs and deal with your bankers. And if you have loans outstanding and covenants and such. And a CFO, overall is going to handle, a much larger spectrum of financial needs across the board.
Got it. So basically, as the business gets bigger, you're going to have more and more of those players on the team.
Correct.
Absolutely. So Debbie, if someone wants to know more about Yeakel McCreary, how to get a hold of you guys, what to do, what is the best way for them to contact y'all?
Sure. We have a website. It's yeakelcpa.com. And then so they can reach out there, and we have a link that allows them to contact us through that link. They can give us a call at 810-229-5781. We're right here in Brighton. Or, our website gives our emails, and they can contact us via email as well.
Great. We'll make sure all that information is in the show notes as well. So thank you so much, Debbie, for stopping in and giving us a rundown on kind of the, not necessarily state of the union, but just, what a few things that small businesses ought to be aware of. And also it's very interesting learning about your background and how you got into this. It's very cool.
Well, I appreciate you having me here today. It was a pleasure. The exciting world of tax and accounting.
It's exciting. If you're a small business owner and you're not excited about it, you're doing something wrong, because you gotta know, you gotta have some enthusiasm behind it.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, friends. Well, that is going to wrap up this week's episode of the Chamber Podcast. I appreciate you all watching. We'll catch you on next week's episode. Take care.